Come on, you stupid piece of garbage. What's wrong with you, you dumb car? Jeez, what is the problem?
Okay.
Welcome to Cooper Heavy Industries. Wouldn't be Cooper Heavy Industries without a cold one. I love a barley soda. You know what else I love? The Intruder. I love my 1980 Camaro. She's a great car.
It's slow though.
It is slow, Andrew. Thank you. This car, you know, I built it to go on Power Tour. I've driven it on Power Tour twice. It gets great economy with the leather seats out of the 4th gen. It's really comfortable. It's actually got a halfway decent radio in it. It rides like it's
Slow.
It's not fast, but you know, it's got a 305. Way too much camshaft, even though it's a tiny little Inati Voodoo. Headers, intake, 4-speed automatic, 700, but there's not much you can do with the 305. We're kind of trapped. This is as good as it's going to get. It's really fun to drive.
You know what you could do though?
What?
You could throw this hunk of crap into it.
Well,
350 small block, baby.
we could do that. Here on Cooper Heavy Industries, we're going to build a new engine for the Intruder Camaro. This is going to be a long series of videos. We're going to talk about the elephant in the room, Andrew?
Me?
That's the elephant in the room. Here's to me and to you. This is a 350 crate motor. It was a Jegs, what'd you say, $1,500 stock, 4-bolt, drop-in motor. Had to have an intake and a distributor and a carburetor to make it work.
Long block.
It was a really good engine. It was running when I helped take this engine out. I'm not going to say who I took this engine out, whose car it was in, but it might have been Andrew.
Definitely me.
I pulled this engine out. I bought it from Andrew. I was going to put a different camshaft in it, swap it into 350 right into the Intruder, and everything was going to be hunky-dory.
Except when it wasn't.
Except when it wasn't. I did the thing that everyone said I was crazy to do. I took the oil pan off the engine to check the bearings.
Never look at the bearings.
Never look at the bearings.
Never look at the bearings.
I rode in the car. The engine ran great. We drove it into the garage to take the engine out. And we did the LS swap on that car. When I took the engine apart though, there was a plug in the back of the crankshaft where the throw-out bearing would be that Andrew didn't see when he installed the engine, because Andrew was 4 when he put this engine in the car.
4.5.
So he put the engine together, left that plug in the back of the crankshaft. It hit torque converter in the Turbo 400 transmission, which thrust the crank forward. It beat the thrust face off the thrust bearing and off the crankshaft, beat all the main bearings up, beat the rod bearings up. It pushed forward on the timing set, which pushed up on the camshaft, which beat all the cam bearings out of it. So at that point, I had a set of steel heads and a block and some tins that I could reuse to put this into the other car because all the bearings were bad. And that's when I decided to lose my mind. So we have bought a Eagle rotating assembly that will work with the stock 4-inch bore. That's a stroker crank, so it'll stroke it out to a 377. It would be a 383 if we bored it 30 over, but we're not going to bore the block. And I've got a set of AFR 190 as cast cylinder heads that we're going to use with a Howard's hydraulic roller camshaft, roller rockers. We're going to build everything all at once and be done with it. I'm also going to buy I've already ordered a new 700 transmission to go behind this because I wanted something that I was sure would be able to stand up the engine, and we're going to take the engine and transmission out of the Camaro as it is, except for the intake manifold. That makes sense?
Yeah. So basically, he's going to be filming how to you're going to have to edit this. Basically, what we're going to be doing is if you have a small block 350 that's been beat off, We're going to show you how to stroke it.
Beat up. So in today's video, we're going to start by beginning to prep the block. We're going to have a series of videos on this. I'll do each one individually and then release them one at a time once I get it all done. But the first step is we're going to work on the engine. Let me show you what we're going to do. While my idiot friend is amusing himself, what we're going to do is go in with a die grinder and we're going to clean up all the casting flash and all the oil passages all the way around the top end, and we're going to clean up on the bottom end. We're also going to clearance for oil at the oil pump mounting bosses. We're going to come with a grinder and we're just going to smooth up all the roughness in the casting on the valley so oil will drain back faster. We're going to come around and every sharp edge all the way around the block, inside and out. You can't tell this, but you know, this finger knows that there's a sharp edge here, and we're just going to knock that down to deburr it all the way around the block. Once we get done with that, we're going to knock all the core plugs out, all the oil passage plugs out on the entire engine, take a brush set and clean everything, see if there's any casting sand down in the water jackets. Going to go in with wires, screwdrivers, rod, whatever we've got that we can clean down in there, and see if there's any sand or debris or anything in the water jackets and knock that all out now. Get everything all cleaned up. And I do have a little trick on how to clean all these mating surfaces that will work on an old school engine like this, but specifically does not work on late model Hemi engines. So if you got a late model Hemi, the method I'm going to teach you on cleaning all these decks, do not do it. You have to have those finished to a certain finish with like a Sun-In machine or something like that. But we're going to clean up. Obviously, there's RTV on the block. All these mating surfaces, we're going to get them all nice and clean. So when we put this together, hopefully it won't leak. Well, no, it's a small block Chevrolet. It's going to leak. It won't leak as much. We're going to clean the bores up with just a honing stone. And I do have a camshaft installing tool that I found on Craigslist. So we're going to pull these cam bearings out and put new cam bearings in, because like I said, these are beat up on the top. I don't know if you can see. Maybe you can see right there. It's real rough right there from where the cam was pushed up. So we're going to work on all that and see where we get. So let's set this up and we will start making rough things smooth. There, it's recording now. Okay, we're going to take the old-fashioned air grinder, and we're going to start by knocking the casting flash out of these oil galleys, and then we're going to start working on just smoothing up this area first, and then we'll deburr this edge, and then we'll go from there. Okay. Several things to remember is this and in here are oil galleys. So if you go cutting too deep, you'll cut into the oil galley. So you don't want to cut these things super deep. All you want to do is clean up the edges, knock all the burrs off, round over the corners so that it's nice and smooth transitions for the oil to flow. I'm going to get a little bit more right here on this lip. This one's real good, and then the front's pretty good. And then we'll start working on polishing up this galley a little bit with this burr and see if we can just knock all this roughness out. See how this is rounded off in there? And I got a little bit more of a lip right here I want to get off. Alright, so you can see you don't want to cut in too deep. You don't want to get into any oil passages that are in there, because there is an oil passage that goes around these lifter bores. So all I've done is knock all the rough spots off, and here I blended over this edge a little bit. It's not a lot. All you want to do is just so the oil flows better. Now we're going to come back and polish all this stuff up. Okay, we went over it with the grinder, and we also went over it with Andrew's little Milwaukee roll-lock spinner here, and this is way overkill. You don't have to do any of this. This is a complete waste of time, but it does look cool. So we're going to keep going, and we're going to finish doing this side of the valley, and then we're going to figure out how to go in the middle. I will say that the battery power tools, which I don't know, are quieter. More better. Oh, better. Okay, we're done here. You can see I have tried to polish all this up pretty good with the grinders, the bits, the carbide bits, Andrew's little 12-volt Milwaukee grinder. They don't sponsor me, so whatever. So we got all this cleaned up, way better than it has to be for a street engine. Then we went all the way around all the 90-degree corners on the outside of the block and the top of the block, except for the bolt holes, because Andrew said that he wanted to do those, and I'm not going to let him. And then there's already a chamfer around the cylinders. So we've knocked all the sharp edges all the way around. All of the push rod holes and the oil drain back holes, well, there's no push rod holes. All the drain back holes have been clearanced around the edge to open them up a little bit. This is completely unnecessary for a street engine. You do not have to do this to a straight engine. I'm just doing this because I wanted to, and because I had the equipment to do it, and it just takes time. So the next thing I do is I got to do the same thing in here. I'm going to polish in where the timing assembly goes. As you can see, I've radiused these holes. Andrew was filming me filming. I think Andrew might have had too much to drink, which is funny because he's had like one beer.
I haven't eaten anything.
Yeah. So I've tried to clean up all the oil holes to make oil go through from the top end as quick as I can. So the next thing to do is we're going to knock out the freeze plugs, and we're going to clean up the water jackets, and then we're going to roll it over and clean up the bottom end. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to radius all the sharp edges, but I'm not going to polish the bottom of the crankcase like I did up here, simply because oil doesn't sit and drain down like it does up here at the top. So that is the finished lifter valley, and we'll move on now to the bottom of the block. Okay, it is a new day here in the shop. last time I polished the lifter valley and polished the cam cover area, timing cover area, and deburred all the sharp edges all the way around the block, including in the crankshaft area on the bottom of the block. Again, that's not necessary on a street engine. This is just, I'm only doing it for basically my own entertainment. Now, a lot of people will paint this area that I've polished with Glitol, which is an electric motor paint. That's probably a good idea. My concern is if you don't get the block prep perfectly clean, that paint could chip off, fall in, and get on the screen on the bottom of the oil pickup, which would starve the engine of oil, and I feel like that's just going to cause more problems. There's a lot of people have had great results with it. Do your own research. I'm not going to do it just because I'm paranoid. So we've cleaned everything. All this polishing, completely superfluous. You don't have to do any of that. All you need to do here is get this stuff clean. I do think that knocking down all the sharp edges does make a little bit of a difference. Mostly it makes it easier to deal with the engine while you're working on it. It may reduce stress risers. Now, the one thing I did do that I am sure will make a difference is all these casting flash areas on all the return areas, cleaning all that out so that there's smooth oil return. I do think that helps get the oil back to the pan better. So that's probably the one thing I did that was most essential. Now, these 3 galley plugs on a small block Chevrolet, and maybe others, but I'm only talking about small block Chevrolet because that's what I've been researching right now. With a high volume oil pump, these can tend to push out. So I've got an NPT tap. We're going to tap those for screw-in plugs. Now, when we do that, we want to make sure that the plug is completely flush with this surface when we're done with the process. If it goes too deep, it can block oil going through the passages. So we want that plug just to be flat so that it won't interfere with the cam gear, and it will keep oil from going out, which would be obviously 3/8 half-inch hole of oil pumping straight out. You'll have no oil pressure. So I am going to tap that. I'm also going to I've got my bucket full of random taps. I'm going to find all the right size taps. I'm going to tap every hole, not to make new threads, but to clean the threads. I'm just chasing those holes to get all the stuff that's in there, old sealant, any rust, any dirt, stuff from my grinding. I want to get all that out of all the holes all the way around. I'm going to do all of them everywhere just so assembly goes a lot easier. When I assembled this engine, I bought, and of course, you know me, I'm cheap. I bought a eBay stainless steel stud kit for the whole engine. So that will convert like the oil pan to studs, the valve covers to studs. The intake bolts have to stay bolts because otherwise you can't get the intake on. And I have changed my mind, and I've bought a stud kit for the mains and a windage tray. So when I clean the bottom end, I am going to go ahead and put in the ARP. I just bought ARP because they're kind of the ones everybody uses. So I've got a stud kit that will accept a windage tray. So when we do the mock-up on the bottom end, we're also going to have to make sure that the windage tray will clear the stroker crank kit and the oil pan. So there's going to be a lot of, I'm hoping I don't have to go to the machine shop, but I might have to assemble the bottom end and then take it all back apart again just to make sure everything clears. Because famously, there is a Roadkill Garage episode where they didn't check for clearance and the crank hit the oil pan when they put a stroker engine in a Mopar truck. Once I get done cleaning I'm going to clean everything. I've got one of these brush kits. They're fairly generic. You can get them all over the internet. It's got a big brush to clean the cylinder bores. It's got long brushes to clean the oil galleys. It's got smaller brushes to get in smaller areas. There's some that are sized for the lifter galleys. So I'm going to scrub the engine out. Then we'll mask everything up and we'll paint it. And once we're done painting it, then we'll start working on mocking up assembly. Actually, there's one more thing we're going to do. I have I bought a hone. This is a 3-stone hone instead of the dingle ball style hone. And I'm going to quickly run the hone through each cylinder, not to change the size, just to add fresh cross hatching. And there's one cylinder where, from this engine sitting open for a couple years, there's a little bit of minor surface rust. It's wiping up with a rag. Really, that's superfluous, but I'm just going to give it a quick couple swipes through just to knock the glaze off for the new rings to seat faster. Once I have everything clean, I'm going to wash it and scrub it out with just regular dish soap. You know, the degreasing dish soap, just like you use in the kitchen to get grease off a pot. I'm going to use it to get all the oil and debris off this engine. And I'm going to do that outside because I don't want to get water all over everywhere in my shop. It's already a slip hazard enough with this slick cement floor. And then dry it up using shop air, and probably use a propane torch just to heat up to make sure to get all the water out of the pores in the cast iron. Mask it up. We're going to give it a coat of spray paint. And the only color that I ever paint any engines, because I paint all of my engines silver, so I'm going to paint it silver. That's from the Plymouth when I built it. The Chrysler Flatheads were always silver. And since then, I've always built, every engine I built, I painted them all silver just because I do. I like to have them silver. Also, since this is going to have aluminum heads, aluminum intake, it'll all look halfway decent having it all one color silver. I just like it. Whatever. Paint it whatever color you want. It doesn't change anything. So that's the plan. I'm going to start by running the tap through everything. I am going to clean the outside of the block with a cut brush on the grinder. I cannot stress this enough. Whenever you use a cut brush on a grinder, you have to use eye protection and a full face shield. Those things shed wires super fast, and you only get one set of eyes. So you've got to make sure you keep those wires from hitting your eyes. So always use a face shield and safety glasses if you're going to use a cut brush on a grinder. And I'm just going to use it on the outside just to knock any of the leftover grease off, any of this loose paint. This engine was painted black. I don't know if Andrew painted it black or he got it black, whichever. I'm going to go ahead and knock everything down just to get as much smooth, raw cast iron to paint. And we will go from there. Okay, now I have got everything rough cleaned, everything's tapped. I didn't make you watch all of that because that would just be agonizing to anyone. It was tedious to me, so watching it would be horrible. I haven't washed everything up yet. I have gone over the deck with a Scotch-Brite on a grinder just to knock all this gasket material off, because this gasket was tough. I told you I had a trick on how to make that deck nice and flat and true. The right way is to take it to a machine shop, but I learned this by watching YouTube, so I'm not going to say I invented this. A lot of Australian YouTubers, Skid Factory, Benny's Customs Works, those guys, they do this. You take a flat, large sharpening stone. This one actually happens to be brand new. I've only used it once, and that's to do the other side of the block. Oil it, and then just go back and forth. Get all the way to the top. And you can see how that goes nice and smooth over everything. We'll go around that. I should have pulled that locating pin out, but I didn't. You just go back and forth with it flat on the block. Go around that dowel again. Take a rag every now and then, just check to see if it's getting nice and smooth. What you're looking for not only is smoothness, but you can see the smoothness in this case because you'll see your horizontal scratches from where it's getting burnished in good. A little more oil. I'm just using motor oil on this stone just to keep all the stuff that's getting up off the block in suspension. Careful not to drop it in the cylinder. That's the hardest part about this. Okay, now this works on an old school engine like this because the block finish isn't as critical. If you're doing a newer engine and you have to check on the ones, I don't know which one specifically, but I do know that the 3rd gen Hemi, the modern Hemi, the block, deck, and head has to be finished to a certain finish using a diamond stone. So this isn't going to work for that, but it works for this engine because the finish isn't as critical. And I'm also using a thicker head gasket, so I've got some crush. But I'm just trying to get this nice and smooth and deburred. And any place where I might have got a high spot or a low spot from taking the gasket off, I want to smooth that out with this stone because it's wide and flat. Like I said, since this one's new, I feel pretty good about it being true. And I think that's about as good as it needs to get because I'm seeing horizontal lines all the way across the block. There are a few little swirl marks here, so maybe I need to go a little bit more, or I might have got too aggressive with that Scotch-Brite pad. But I think that this is going to be flat enough for what we're trying to do. Because I know I'm using new cylinder heads, so they'll be flat. So just like sharpening a pocket knife, you're not removing an awful lot of material. So I'm not taking an awful lot off this deck, so I don't think that we're going to have a problem where we're affecting compression, because you can see there's still some staining where the gasket was, so I haven't taken this thing down far. Just enough to try to make sure it's good and flat, so when I put the new gasket on, it'll have a nice good surface to seal to. Now, this thing is absolutely filthy from all the grinding and work I've done to it today. So the next step is I'm going to take it outside and wash it. But as hot as it is today, I might just be done. It's getting pretty hot. So that's where we are now. The next thing we're going to do, like I said, we're going to wash it and then dry it and then paint it. have finished washing the block, and I took the air hose and blew all the water out of it that I can. I'm still not happy that it's fully dry, so I'm going to go over everything with a blowtorch to knock any residual moisture out before I start masking and painting. I'm also going to go ahead and install the freeze plugs because I personally don't like the way the brass freeze plugs look unpainted, so I'm going to paint them. You can kind of see down in the bores, well, maybe you can't, but it is getting a little bit of flash rust on that machine surface from washing it. I have not honed the cylinder bores yet. I'm not going to hone it until I test fit the rotating assembly because I'm pretty sure these bottoms of these cylinders are going to have to be notched to clear the rotating assembly. You know, obviously there's more reinforcement on this side than on this side because the pistons are offset to one side or the other. It doesn't really look like it until you look at them pretty close, and we'll study that when we get to that point. But the pistons actually offset this way, so you can see when you look straight down through that the bores are offset. This bore is towards this way. This bore is more forwardser from the camera's eye. Now I'm backwards, so this is the back of the block here where the oil pump bolts. So if you're looking down, these are the number 4, number 8 and 7 cylinders. You can see how they're offset. The pistons are going to be offset on the crank as well. So I might have to do some clearancing in this area for this piston and this area for this piston because this is going to be more back. Anyway, I'm going to have to do all that. And I'm going to do my finish bore, which is really just going to be a cleanup. I'm just going to run the bore through it quickly just to put a hone on it and knock off any surface rust that's come up. It's not going to take long at all. I'm not trying to remove any material. And then before I paint, I'm going to wipe everything down with a cloth with brake parts cleaner on it. Get everything clean. Now I'm going to tape off all of my gasket areas and then take a razor blade and cut between the bolt holes on things like the timing cover, this oil pan rail, water pump area, and then remove the paint on the outside so the paint will wrap up to the middle. I like to do that so that you have all the machine surfaces covered with paint on the outside, and on the inside no paint. When that gasket's down, it's going to bridge over that gap. Now on the cylinder heads, I'm going to mask off the whole deck, put the cylinder head gaskets on, and trace around the outside and then cut on my pencil line and remove it so that there's no paint whatsoever underneath where the cylinder head gaskets are going to go. So the next thing I'm going to do is knock in these freeze plugs and then start masking, and then we will paint it. All right, I got the freeze plugs in all the way around, including these two back here in the back of the block. I had to reposition the block on the stand a little bit, and I'm going to have to move it again when I do the cam bearings for clearance. This is simple. Coat the freeze plug with this Super 300 gasket sealer because I have it on the shelf. Then I use ye old precision instrument and a wacky stick and just hammer them in until you can kind of hear them bottom, and then they'll be flush. And then I just took a rag with some brake cleaner and just cleaned up the surplus so it's not such a sloppy mess. So the next thing is to wipe everything down with carburetor cleaner and mask it up. silver paint is on now. There was something going on with the nozzle on that spray can. It just wasn't spraying right. It was really weird. You had to push it super duper hard to get it to spray. But it did get everything sprayed with the cast aluminum color that I was looking for. I've still got to paint all the tins and clear coat the aluminum parts that are going on the engine. But that's at least got the silver on the engine. So we're going to stop here and let paint dry. Just got the transmission in. This is a new 700R4 to go in the intruder behind the 383. So we're going to do one of those unboxing videos that all the people on the internet love so much. And see what we got here. Yeah, this is going to be a challenge. Let's see. Come over here. Come here. There we go. We have a 700 in the trash bag. I see they painted it my favorite color, silver. Comes with a TV cable on it. It's a self-adjusting cable, although it sure looks like it's, I bet that, yep, that pulls out, so that'll be good, so I can adjust that to that transmission. And this is wired up for 1-wire lockup, and supposedly it's rated to 600 horsepower, which that engine's not going to make. You got the box. Rolling again. Okay, now we got it out. Scan it up. It's got a fancy chrome oil pan on it with a drain plug. That's very nice. It did not come with a speedometer sending unit. I specified it without one because I'm going to reuse the one that's in the Camaro for this transmission since it's already set up like this. I didn't spec for a K case, but it's got a 2-wheel drive tail shaft on it, so that'll be okay. And it's got fluid in, a little bit of fluid coming out of it, so it must have been tested in some way. So that's it. This should bolt right in because it's the same thing as what we got. So this will be a big upgrade, although my friend Kevin Cooper built the one that's in the car, and it's stout enough for the engine I'm building anyway.